I'm none.
Hello, how are you?
Good. I missed you this week.
Oh well.
Oh well.
Oh well.
Oh well. How
You
are
know
you?
where I am.
I know where you are. I can find you for sure. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's lousy outside.
It's really wet, isn't it?
Uh,
It's one of those
I'm
wintry,
ready.
wet days where you just want to stay
I'm
in,
ready
huh?
for warm.
Me too. So I want you to share in your words because I'm not told me something really exciting today. That the channel
Oh, the
yeah,
channel as a
channel
whole
as a whole,
in the
which is how
last
many shows? Five, six.
six
Okay, six
six
like me,
shows
me and five others.
since I think it's since July, June or July.
Uh huh.
We just passed 1.5 million viewers.
Views. So that's
Yeah,
really good, really good. I mean, that was like music to my ears.
yeah,
So that's really good. So thank you for sharing. So you're good otherwise, huh?
yeah,
A okay, right?
yeah.
Cool. All right. So now we're going to get on with the show. So just so that all of you know, please feel free at any time to call in, Skype in with us. You can chat with us, any of those things. We'd love to have you anytime. So, had a chat, just go next to the video that you see. You'll see a little line there. Put your name. You can put your nickname if you like, and you can say hi. You can write us, whatever. You can ask questions during the show. That's great. If you want to call in at any time and ask a question, share a little personal experience with us about yourself, 919-518-9773. Or last but not least, you can also Skype in with us at computers, that's plural, the number 2K voice. And you can come in from anywhere in the world and share whatever you want to share with us because what you have to say really matters. And we want you part of the show even though you're not sitting here with us. So let me get on with the show. So I'm going to introduce to you my first guest. Well, we have two guests. First is Dr. Manny St. Victor. I met Manny on Google Plus, and he is delightful. He's a psychiatrist, psychologist, doctor. He's done all these things, and he has some extraordinary things to say, big things that he is figuring out ways of saying them in ways that we all can understand. He's taking things, concepts that might have been not for us, maybe just for some scientist somewhere, but he's putting it in terms that we can understand so that it could make a difference in all of our lives. So I want to introduce Manny. Hey, Manny.
Hi, Marilyn. How are you? I'm glad to
Good.
be on here.
Good. I'm glad you're here. And Manny's a new daddy again, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I have my daughter Imani is 5 months old, so I'm sleeping fantastic at night.
You are. Good for you. Wow.
That was sarcasm.
Oh, that is sarcasm. Oh,
Yeah,
see?
that was
He's so
absolute
good. He has
sarcasm.
such a good smile. I can't tell sarcasm from not sarcasm.
That was absolute sarcasm. Yeah,
Cool.
no, she's on the every couple hours she's up and I'm changing diapers. So
Well, I bet you're a really good daddy.
thank you.
So, what is neuroscience? Can you just tell us that much?
It's brain science, but more and more, the deeper we dig into neuroscience, the more we're finding that it's the science of being human. It's understanding why we tick the way we do, why we respond the way we do, and why we live the way we do when sometimes it might not be what we want to do. And figuring out how to help people live a fuller life based on what they really, really want inside, what their purpose is.
So, are you saying then that neuroscience is kind of like mind over matter?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So, we got a concept now of something, of where we're going to go and how we're going to discuss this, right? Okay. So, now, Manny, can you share with us and introduce Kellum for us?
Sure. Kellen is an executive coach, but he's my coach, which is what's awesome. Is that I met Kellen a while back through Dr. Vogelman, and I've been working with Kellen. He has a program, Break the Cage, and I was impressed by his ability to create concepts and ideas that people can identify with and break out of their structures of thinking. And so I was fortunate enough to partner with him to do Break the Cage MD to help doctors become healthier and overcome their own mind so that they can in turn help their patients go mind over matter.
Gotcha.
I
So,
like that
emotional.
phrase, so I'm going to go ahead and
Yeah.
use it. Thanks.
Yeah. Emotionally well. That's what you're saying.
Mhm.
So,
Yes.
welcome to the show, Kellum. Nice to have you here.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here. I'm where it's freezing too. I'm up in Edmonton, Alberta today, and it's at
Ooh,
least a billion degrees below zero.
ooh, my God, it's cold, isn't it? So you're an executive coach, but I hear such a great voice. It sounds like you might have done radio at one time or something, like a DJ or
I,
something like that.
I have been a radio announcer. I've been a radio host on LA Talk Radio. I've also owned a recording studio for 35 years, so I've done a lot of things.
So you've done a lot of things, but now you're doing executive coaching. And so Manny explained a little bit about what you do. So could you, in your words, share what is he talking about when he says about these concepts and what you do with these concepts?
Well, I get asked a lot. I've been a C-level executive in 2 countries and been on stages around the world, and I get asked a lot how I made kinds of accomplishments that I did. How did you do that? That sort of thing. And so what I did is I set out to figure that out and to create basically some models that I can use with people to help them get out of constrained thinking, beliefs that we have that we can't do certain things. Most of the limitations are here. And so working with different ways to make that go away and let people live up and in their true zone of genius.
So, and you finding that doctors and you know the individuals obviously that come more from their head are really open to opening up their sensitivity. That they're more apt to doing that now. They're interested in doing that now.
Well, a lot of what's happened is doctors are just one, but chiropractors, doctors, attorneys, professionals that went to school to learn a certain thing and then they go work in it, the model that the work actually is way different than what they thought they signed up for. So they get burned out, they get frustrated, they feel like I could do so much more. I'm not really helping people the way I wanted to. And so it's a way of creating different opportunities for them business wise. But initially, what has to happen is we have to change what we think is possible. And my career was spent doing impossible things in corporate settings around the world. And so it's about learning to believe outside of the box and then learning how to apply that in a way that lets you create what you previously thought you couldn't do.
Well, I wasn't quite sure how we were going to go about this conversation, but I'm really loving this because so what we're talking about can be applied to anybody who's been taught to be to come from the head, who's been taught to use that you have to use information, you need facts and figures. But now what you're saying is you're helping people recognize that there is an outside the box.
Absolutely.
Completely. I mean, outside the box is so limiting. Our education system, our societal structures are all built to behave in a particular fashion, and our innate desires are to go outside the lines, to color outside the boundaries. And the whole fight is the constraining influence versus the natural creativity that we have, and learning to either stuff it, which blows us up personally and professionally, or unleash it, which lets us, number one, be satisfied internally, and then two, help people create a life in a much more powerful and cool way. So that's what I do myself, and that's what I help other people do.
This is a really good topic. It's really good because this is the bridge to help people because the information doesn't change. It's how we take the information from an expert, whether we do or we don't. I mean, it's so interesting too because when Manny joined me on my Google Plus show, and he was brilliant, but he's got this a lot of information in his head, but he's got a big heart. But the information in his head was wanting so much to come out, but yet that information has to be understood in a short period of time. We don't have a lot of time to understand the information like Manny learned it, so we need to, kind of make it so that we all understand it, right, in a short period of time so we can do something with the information. And Manny's laughing because you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
Go
And
ahead,
that's
explain what you, go ahead,
Kelly.
explain it. Yeah, explain
Yeah.
it.
Well, what happens is that as a physician, when you go into medical training, you learn all these long, complex Latin words. And it becomes part of your identity. You become smarter and smarter and smarter, air quotes. But you become more removed from communicating the things that you know from the people that you're supposed to be helping. Part of it becomes sort of you're trained into a role and a sense of power and importance. And until you're able to move to a place of vulnerability where you're able to be you and not you doctor, you lawyer, you whatever, until you're comfortable with yourself enough where you're able to sit across the table and have a conversation and hear not a patient, but another person who wants your help and wants the information that you have, but doesn't want to be talked down to or browbeaten with it, you're not really useful and all that information is useless. And that was one of the main things that I want to communicate going forward to other physicians. And basically all this medical information is not helping anyone if we're giving it to people in overpriced 15-minute slots where we rush them in, rush them out, and write them a prescription. We learn so much and we can do so much.
So Manny, let me ask you something. Once Kellen started to talk to you, once you started being coached, well, first of all, how did you know there was a different way? How did you recognize first that something wasn't working?
There's a frustration that you have because what happened, and I can take it back to my childhood. I've always been one where I would go after this success on other people's terms. I went to Harvard and I was like, okay, I have this degree that means so much to everyone else. And yet there's this yearning, this hunger, this frustration, like I'm not done. And then I went to medical school and then I went and studied psychiatry. And it's like I'm looking for this thing, but at the same time, I was put in a position of power where I was telling other people what was wrong with them. And it's so easy to, there's a thing called self-enhancement where you criticize other people and it feels better for a minute. That position of power it's safe, but it's empty. It lacks the spirituality. It lacks the depth. And that after a while, it eats away at you. And that's the point at which I had to find another way.
So you knew something was missing.
Yep.
You knew something was missing. So when you first met Kellen or you heard about Kellen, what was it that woke up inside of you in just knowing that this man existed or this something that there was something that he could show you? What was that?
Well, he resonated with me because I saw him doing so many different things. He was recording stuff that was charting high on the billboard. He was testifying in front of Congress. I was like, that looks like fun. But as soon as I spoke to him, he had a spirituality about him where he felt at peace. It wasn't the compulsive drive that had driven me to accomplish all the stuff that I've done. And it felt as if I'd be able to find a sense of relief if I could figure out what he was doing to make it happen.
So so we're going to get to him now, because I really want to hear from him because I know he has so much to share. But before we do, so he was bringing to you two different notions. One was this level of peace that comes with this abundance, where you're not feeling like you've got to gobble up everything, but that it's already there. But also a way of you using your information in a way that could be relayed to me that I would understand. That he showed you that he could do those things.
Yep.
Take somebody who was really heady and help him get to that balance, coherence.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. I love it. So Kellen. So
I'm here.
Okay, so I know you've been listening. I've been watching you. So
I listen very intently.
You do. I notice another listener when I see one. So what have you heard?
I've heard the Manny that I know. I mean, we met a while ago, and my first comment to him before he was even a client was that we needed to put him on Operation De-Geek Speak. And so I just called it that, and this is the way I work. I mean, I was working for the Minister of Energy in Canada, and my first meeting with him, I called him Dude. I said, Dude, let me tell you how this works. And I'm comfortable enough with who I am and what I know that resonates with the right people, and they immediately get it. or they don't, and I really don't care because I can't help everybody. I can help the ones that understand. And when I said that to Manny, he got it, and so we went through some of his dialogues, and I helped him rewrite them, and we got to the emotion. What is he trying to help me with? And so I would play somebody broke. So I'm broken and I have this wrong with me. So help me. And he would say it and I'd say, so I don't understand any of that. So start over. And why don't you tell me this? And I would tell him what to tell me. And he said, well, that's what I said. And I said, yeah, I know, but it isn't. And so he would help me in a way that I then understood. And then I would have him do the imaginary pictures. I would say, now imagine you're with someone who's really struggling. And you would say this to him, and I would, one of the gifts that I have is just to be able to language stuff at an instant in a really powerful way. And so I would give him that, and he would just like, yes. And so we just worked on that. And that was one of the first things we did before we started working on products and how to get clients and stuff like that.
So this is brilliant because so Kellen, you're a really good listener, as we said. So you're also, and I can resonate with you because you're an interpreter. So you're able really well to hear what somebody is saying and hear past what they're saying. So you are able to hear into what they say, to be able to then change the language so that, I mean, you can understand it so well that you can then change the help to change the language so that it's understandable and that it comes out in the way that Manny would have intended it to come out.
That's exactly right. And one of the things in my 30-year career, I had a 30-year career in commodity markets, and I ended up testifying before Congress and all that stuff Manny talked about. But I was usually always the one that was sent to Congress or sent to the legislature to talk to the politicians because I had the ability to turn really complex stuff not only into simple terms, but if it was an accountant I was talking to, immediately all the accounting analogies would come to mind. And I was able to do it in their language at a moment's notice in a simple way. So I ended up with that job all the time because I could help the people that change things or make rules understand what needed to happen in their language so they were comfortable with it. And that was just a gift that I had. And then I took it now to business coaching and personal breakthrough work.
Yeah, I really, I, I really respect what you're doing. I feel like it's really so important that we're able to do this, that we're able to have people really listen and to, come off of those, those points where nobody understands what they're trying to say, yet they have so much to say. So as far as you personally, Kellen, what kind of person are you, General? Are you the spiritual person? I mean, what do you believe? What's your connection?
I'm very centered. I have 4 core areas that I work on every day, which is body, the physical part, being, which is a connection to God or the universe, however you want to characterize that, balance, which is about the relationships that I have, and then business. So body, being, balance, and business. And it's an arbitrary division, but it's how I cut up my life. I make sure I touch them all every day. I make sure I'm always learning. And I say make sure, that's the wrong words. I enjoy those things. And because I've done that over many years, I've ended up writing 5 books on meditation. I have been a sufferer and a person who struggled with depression as a creative artist. And I've written a book on that. I've been a recording artist for 30 years and owned a studio as well. And here's the interesting thing. I got driven to these world platform levels of accomplishment in multiple careers by an emotional deficiency that I had, which was a desperate need to get the approval of someone, my mom in this particular case, that I could never have. So I got driven to these insane levels of competence and accomplishment and still remained unsatisfied until I was able to sort of sort all that out and bring it to a place of peace and harmony.
Yeah, so you were one of those people who wasn't good enough. So you go through life never, right? Not ever being good enough, and and that's the heart. The people that are like that are the ones that use the word feeling, and they're the ones that, like me, I'm that person. I'm not I mean, I can dream, I can do, but I'm really a beer. I'm all about the rapport with somebody, and that's what's so interesting about the work you do, is that you're into connection. and you are so good at connecting what the kinds of things that Manny does, or the kinds of things that people like Manny, the brilliant people like Manny can do. You're so good at connecting it to the common man. I would say. I mean, you're just really good at that. You understand where people are because of where you've been emotionally, and it's a brilliant connection.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really enjoy doing it. It means the world to me. It's my passion. So what I say when people ask me what I do, I say, well, I help people do the thing they don't believe they can do with tools they don't know they have and power they don't know they control. And that's my little,
That's good.
one sentence shtick.
So gotcha. So what is your personal mission for the world?
My personal mission for the world is to do that, and to help people who know they have something more to do to find it, and to not only do it, but do it in a way that serves the most people so they can make money and have fun. Because if you don't make money doing it, you can't do it very long.
That's right.
So whatever it is that you love to do, we have to create it in a way that's valuable to someone else, and then put the mechanisms in place that they can receive that service gratefully and in a way to exchange value, which is money, so people can get paid. So
Right.
Manny, for example, we're creating some products to help him turn that, he calls it medicine 2.0, but turn that new model of helping to get away from the 15-minute slice burnout model to a new one that he's creating, and helping him create the marketing and products to do that. I have some other physicians that I'm doing that with, but not only them, I have clients all over the world to help them understand themselves, figure out what they do better than anyone, and then turn that into a vehicle for service and make money and have fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about making money. I mean, I think we all should make money. I mean, I became a Superior Court mediator many years ago because I really wanted to help connect people, and I could interpret what people are saying from one level to another, and then I could help, help them to bring out whatever it was that they wanted to bring out. But I know a lot of mediators would do it for free. And I'm like, why would you do this for free? What's the point? Everybody, it's an exchange. Everybody gets to enjoy, if one person's successful, everybody can be successful.
Well, I probably
Yeah.
needed you at some point in my journey. I could have used a good mediator at different places, but that's another story.
Well, yeah, well, anytime. I completely understand what you're saying. So the other thing I wanted to say while you were saying what you were saying was I imagine that physicians, medical physicians that are actually working with you and have the opportunity to do this kind of work in general have much better bedside manner.
They do when we're done.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings up a good point when you said that. When do you notice, Kellum, and Manny shaking his head. So do you know what my question is, Manny?
I think you're going to ask us if you can tell the difference in me.
Well, that was going to be,
first-
yes, that's going to be one of my questions. So can he, yes. And how long did it take? I'm imagining, I'm envisioning, I'm guessing that when you do this kind of work with people, and when people do this kind of work, because I see it in my own practice, it doesn't take that long when they know it. When you take that arrow and you shoot it right to that thing inside of people, because most everybody should have it. People get this pretty quick, and the light bulb turns on, the peace turns on, the oh thank God turns on. I have it, right, Manny? What do you think?
Yeah, but it takes a certain level of acceptance of who you are. If you've had a lifetime of messaging that you've been repeating to yourself from childhood that you're not good enough, you're going to want to continue to hide behind your medical degree, your lawyer degree, your
Gotcha.
judge degree. And when you're in social places, you're going to behave in the way that you've been subconsciously programmed to behave, instead of going by what you value, your sense of humor. And even further, you're not going to take the time to hear what the other person is saying, because your autopilot will continue to kick in. There's a certain vulnerability in sitting across the table from someone and not speaking in neuroscience code, where 30 years of my life I was groomed that when you're speaking like this, it gets you a certain level of society. It opens you up to, well, they don't like me. You know, if they don't like the physician, I was a psychiatrist. I put you in a padded room. I didn't care if you didn't like me.
Right.
But if I'm in a room with you, you don't like me, then it's me. I have to deal with that.
So I'm curious, Manny, how has this changed? I mean, how did it feel as it was changing, and how does it feel?
Frustrating.
What was frustrating?
Because you tend to, anytime you have a stressor, you tend to go into the autopilot. It's like learning karate. When someone comes at you with the moves
Hmm.
in combat, you're not going to be thinking, what was the move we've been rehearsing? You're going to go with the reflex moves. And one of the things in medicine is you'll be in on call right there with the patient there, with your attendings there, and they will hit you with 1,000 questions. And if at any point you're not listing off studies, you're not talking about labs, you're not talking about the data, you're vulnerable to humiliation, because not only has your handwriting got to be so scripted that no one can read it,
Right.
you have to sound like a doctor. And I've been, since 1991, training to sound like a doctor. And it was anything but natural to, when under fire,
Hmm.
not revert to the training that,
The doctorhood.
yeah, I mean, you pay a lot for it, and
Sure.
you value it, because in your mind, when I was, 18 years old and I left my parents' home, the definition of success was to finish this journey. And when I finished this journey, the white coated stethoscope person who people had to wait 8 weeks to see was the measure of success, but it was empty.
So, Manny, give us an example of you being out in the world when you are consciously shifting from doing the doctor thing to doing the heart, spiritual, big, big Manny thing. What? Give us an example of being at a fundraiser or being at a party or being at work when you knew in a moment you couldn't go to the doctor head thing. You had to do something else. And what was that other thing that you did?
Well, it's much more rewarding. Being with people is a lot more pleasant when you're not running a list of differential diagnoses of what their psychological profile is.
Okay.
It's when you interact with people out of interest instead of out of a need to validate your role. You don't have a checklist where you're like, this person probably was abused as a child, or he has this attachment type, and likely he probably during the winter has a bit of bipolar. And you don't think about it. Well, at least I didn't think about it at the time. But what you're doing is, when you're so busy putting this person in all these boxes and, you know, diagnosing them, you're devaluing a potential relationship, because, you've checkboxed them and you haven't really heard the person. You've heard an abstraction, and you've devalued it to the point where it's not a rich, pleasant
Right.
relationship. And you don't really have anything
So let
friendly
me
to
let me
say about it.
interrupt you a second. I want everybody to listen very intently to what he's saying, because he's speaking for everyone. He's not just speaking for, a doctor or a psychiatrist or a brilliant businessman who's into technology, who's speaking tech tech language and not language. He's speaking about a lot of people, and he's sharing what it's like to, in a bigger picture, what it's the bigness of our life and of this world, of being able to really enjoy being in a relationship, communicating with people in a big way, not just on that one level. So this is huge, because a lot of people do this. A lot of people go to the head thing and not the connection. And Manny's really sharing the value of the beauty of the connection. So could you please, do you have a particular um, thing in mind when you were at a someplace, at a party or somewhere, where you chose to connect as opposed to do the head thing, and what that was like? Can you share something in particular? Like, you're different now than when I met you the first time, right?
Uh,
What are you doing now that's different? Do you know? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I can describe it scientifically, but it wouldn't be useful. Is the point, and that's what's different. What's different is, you asked me that question, and the answer that would come to mind, and I'll just go into geek speak
Yeah,
for a
go
bit,
ahead.
is that when a person is able to evoke their core values in the context of a choice, what happens is your brain flips from top down, from bottom up mode, which is environmentally mediated behavior, to goal directed behavior, where the electricity at your V1
All right,
level
hold it.
balances.
Kellen, you talk to him now. This is a
Yeah,
perfect time to show your. Go ahead, you do
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I will. What that means is you lose your fear of vulnerability. And instead of replacing it with, you choose to be vulnerable. You choose to expose your humanity. And you go at the conversation from when he said goal directed, it means what I really want, not to impress you, but in the larger context. I'm putting my arms around the world, like I want to include you in our mutual conversation. And I'm demonstrating for you my willingness to be vulnerable and exchange pleasantries or deep conversation on a humanistic, vulnerable level so that we can actually talk to each other instead of talk at each other.
Yep.
Manuel, did he speak for you good?
Yeah, but that's what it comes down to, because um, you can think of it as, when it's top down, you can be pushing through and over asserting yourself. It's the difference between being assertive and being aggressive. You can walk into a conversation and you're not really hearing the person, and everything they said, you have the answer that makes you look smart, the answer that makes you look like a doctor, the answer that makes you slip Harvard into the conversation. You
Right.
know, there's all these answers, but you have to stop and ask yourself the larger goal, the thing that you value, which, when you take the time to be vulnerable, is the relationship. If this is someone you're enjoying being with, does a relationship benefit from you forcing the person to listen to your geekery? And the answer is no, usually.
So,
Yeah, you don't want to
right.
be in, like, pardon my French, a pissing match with everyone you meet. You just relax, find out what's interesting about the person, get to know them, and answer in ways that help them feel validated, help the relationship feel better, instead of help them feel like they're in the presence of
Right.
greatness. It's a
Well,
waste
my
of
yeah, and my
energy.
take on you, Manny, anyway, is that you are that heart person.
Thank you.
You just were, you learned how to be really good at the other, and that was where you felt the most comfortable because of whatever reason. But you really are a heart person. So you're coming into who you truly are anyway. I mean, you share this stuff with such a smile and a warmth that, I mean, you are a really good connector,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, you really are. And so, Kellen, I want to ask. I mean, I do a lot of work with people in a similar capacity as you do, and I help them feel their heart. I do some biofeedback. Are you familiar with heart math?
I have heard it. I'm not
Yeah.
familiar with the details.
Anyway, yeah, it's a type of biofeedback. So we're not like, if I was talking to Manny and he was talking, I would have him, practice first feeling his heart and talking through his heart, because that would change the tone of, what he was saying, and listening for the words, just similar to you. But I'd love to know more about your procedure that you could share with the world, and how they could do something similar to Manny to connect, because the world's going to be a better place regardless of what we have to say. Manny's got these great scientific notions, somebody else has something else to share, but regardless of what we're sharing, connecting, feeling ourselves, feeling each other is part of what's going to heal the world. So how would you tell people to do this, or what would you suggest? Or
So one of the foundational pieces that I think about is I'm starting to use a hashtag the last few months called the power of truth. And the way I think about that, it can mean lots of things, but we're often untruthful with ourselves. Sometimes it's a matter of protection. We're trying to protect ourselves from feeling bad. And I'm not talking about spouting what you think about somebody's dress or hair every time you see them. I'm not meaning that. But internally. So if I say I'm feeling okay and I'm really not, or I'm feeling the need to impress somebody because I'm scared and I need to slip into the impressive mode, or to be aware of and be truthful about that. And you talked about speaking through your heart. It's kind of like that. What are you actually doing? What's going on? And sometimes that takes a bit of conversation. What do you want to happen? And people say, well, I want to make more money, or I want to fix a relationship, or I want to, get back healthy or whatever, and much deeper. Why do you want that? What does it mean for you? What will it do? What's the best part? All of those questions that we sort of use to get down to the bedrock of what is going on in you. And when people start there and they can actually find a place that they can talk to themselves truthfully, and I create space so they can talk to me truthfully. And one of the things I do is I'm very ruthless. And by that, I mean, I'm extremely good at reading people's energy. A short example will be fun. There was a guy who was making millions as a sales trainer, and he's one of the best in the world. I wasn't aware of him. His reputation, I found out later, actually. We met at an event. He was telling me how he was going to take Zig Ziglar's spot as the next guru, and he may. He's positioned to do that, and he might do it. But when he said that, I just looked at him. I said, "You don't believe that yet, do you?" And he looked at me like, and then he melted, and he said, "I'm working on it." And then he asked me, "How do you know?" And I just talked to him about energy and what it feels like, and his space collapsed. But it opened a dialogue where he was able to be truthful about things between us that he would never have been able to say just minutes before, because he was in the "I'm going to impress you" mode. And because I was willing to just say that and then explain to him gently, I wasn't grumpy about what it is, then he was able to relate to me in a whole different way. And we got to talking about his business and all this other stuff. So it's truth. I'm willing to be truthful. I'm willing to be vulnerable. The places I've been, I was on the phone for this morning with a guy for an hour. Same thing. He was talking about different things, and I just said, chop, 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 and said a few things, and the whole conversation was different after that.
Well, I love the
So
fact that you are a man doing this. That's another thing that's really great, because there are women doing this. I can read energy. I listen to energy, and I listen to what's coming up and listen to what's beyond what's coming up. You're a man doing it, and I commend men for talking about this stuff, because we really need men to come out and talk, for other men to hear it, to listen to it. I mean, so it's really important, the work you're doing, and that you're being vulnerable, Manny. It's so important because you know as well as I do, we've put definitions on words, and we've made them into something that they don't necessarily have to be. We've made the word vulnerable wrong. We've made these things wrong. When what's wrong with being vulnerable? What's wrong with not being, spontaneous, or, not etched in stone? I mean, I come to this show and my guts sometimes come out. I called Manny today. What are we talking about? Because I was confused by the description, because it wasn't exactly what we had discussed before. So I called Manny because I didn't know, and yet I'm good with coming on and not knowing something. I'm good with coming on, talking off the cuff, and just listening and letting it roll. And Manny, you're doing a great job doing that. And
Thank you. Remember, the original topic was going to be quantum physics and science.
Yeah, and you don't know. Yes, and you're doing great with not having it all etched out in stone in front of you. You're doing great with connecting to whatever's coming next when we don't know. And Kellum, I really commend you for doing this, because you're...
Well, there's two...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's two funny things. One is, we can talk about quantum physics if you want. I know the Standard Model really well, and we can do particle physics all the way to the gluons if you want.
Yep.
But I'm teasing. The second thing is, actually, when I speak on stage, I will never stay behind the podium. I wander all over the place through the audience. I jump up and down and do things, and I might weep. And I tell people ahead of time, now look, if I get emotional, don't take it personally. And I do that sort of thing when I speak at events and so forth. So I am very powerful, carry a large energetic presence, but I also am not afraid of emotion. And sometimes I warn people, and sometimes they don't. People get uncomfortable, and I'll just stop, and I'll say, it's just a way. And so that's, yeah.
We're
totally
losing
agree,
you a
and I'm glad
little.
that you said that.
We're losing you a little bit. Can you just repeat what you said about stopping and telling people, just the last minute of what you just said?
You bet. Sometimes if I get emotional,
Mm-hmm.
it's uncomfortable for people. And I will just sort of look at them and say, just deal with it. And, I'm glad that I am what I am, but I'm also glad that you're talking about, the stigma we have around vulnerable, like it's somehow bad, as opposed to simply a condition of our humanity, which needs to be shared and actually enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean that's what's being authentic, what you were talking about, and that it's so interesting to see you two big guys talking about these things. I mean, this is what freeing is about. This is what breaking free is about. It's about, a preconceived notion, shaking it up, sharing, what you're talking about because, you know, I'm none. Can you hear what do you think about what we're talking about? Now you're a big guy and you are I mean, you very often have sat here with us, with me, talking about emotional things and what are you thinking?
I'm just absorbing.
Is there
I'm,
anything that's coming to you?
I'm no.
Okay. Well, I love it, and I want to see more of it. And
Hopefully, we can get more doctors thinking like that because it's what patients need. When someone
yes,
comes to you ill, depressed, lonely, hurt, and vulnerable, they don't need you to see that as an opportunity to play your role and be super healer. They need someone to hear them, reflect where they are, and help them from that position with your
right.
experience.
You see, what Kellum is also, and that's exactly true. When you said that, it referred back to something with him. Is that, people need to see what he's doing, what you're doing. So if he tells people, that I'm going to be emotional, that's giving people permission. It's like people think that they have to be a certain way. Teachers, get up in front of a room. They can't, some not always, but some can't show emotion. They have to maintain the certain decorum. They can't just let it go. And so the fact of being I call myself the example, the experiment. I mean, that's one of the reasons I do this show, is so I can commercialize to some degree all of the little idiosyncrasies that it takes to be free, to chip away at those things that keep us tight and not authentic. Authentic is being vulnerable. Brene Brown, are you familiar with her work? She just does this whole thing on vulnerability, right? She says it like nobody has ever probably said it before, about blame and shame and all these things. You spoke about it. So what if we don't know it all? It's if in that spiritual moment we don't know it all, then it's because Killiam's supposed to bring in the rest. I can't know it all, and maybe I do know a lot, but in this moment I'm not supposed to know it because he's supposed to be the one to bring it.
And that's the glue of the relationship is that you didn't come in there dominating to a power position, but each person had a little bit of validation. Each person enjoyed what the other person bought, and everyone walked away feeling valuable.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
For me, one of the key pieces is permission. So
Mm-hmm.
because I give myself explicit permission
Mm-hmm.
to do whatever I want to do when I'm either working with a client or speaking on stage, get noisy, make noise, cry, then I'm intentionally creating the space for everybody to explore their humanity. If this makes you feel a certain way, good, think about it, feel it. And when I get done, the whole point is I use the word break the cage as the name of a program, and you use breaking free, which is an analogy for the same. We're talking
Absolutely.
about the same
Yes,
things.
yes.
It's to create that permission because it is in that moment of vulnerability that we actually explore when we lock ourselves in those boxes that Manny was talking about and those conditioned behaviors. We don't have permission to explore and to create outside of that, and it's by creating that permission that we get to grow and help other people grow anyway.
Right. And that's what you do. You help give people permission by your example and by what you say. And when you zero in on something, whether it's hearing their energy or hearing whatever, that their truth or not truth, you're giving them permission. We have a gentleman that's been on our show before, and his name is Dan Galloway, I think is his Calloway or Galloway. I can't remember his last name, but he has ADHD.
Yeah.
Galloway. And he's been on like twice, I think. And the first time he came on, he said to me, I'm going to have a really hard time sitting. I said, then don't sit. Stand up and do the show. He said, "Really?" I said, "Absolutely. Stand up and do the show because other people who have ADHD are going to sit back and go, wow, he's doing the show and he can stand up. I'm going to stand up. I'll give myself permission to stand up." How simple is that little bit of permission? Just to, go from sit down to stand up. I think it's great, don't you?
Absolutely. Awesome.
You know, I mean, just having us be able to talk like this is so freeing forever. I mean, it's freeing for me to see, and I'm a pretty free person, but I want, it's free. It's so freeing for me to know that you're doing this.
Well, one of the things that I did the last few months was to, I guess, go public,
Mm-hmm.
as it were, with the 30-year battle that I've had with depression and its toll and consequences on my life, and to writing the book that I just finished that I hope to have published in February. And it's exactly the same thing. It's permission to talk about it. It's being open about its consequences. And it's like when I tell people and they know who I am and where I've been and what I've done, they're like, "You're kidding. That's impossible. You can't." One of my kids called me up and yelled at me, said, you can't. It's not true. You're making this up. And it's interesting, the notion that because certain things have happened in my life, I've been extremely successful and done all these things, that can't be. And after, Robin Williams and some things, I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to do this and we're going to see what happens. And I'm going to give myself permission and everybody else to talk about these things because it's time.
It is time. And so, Manny, when you heard that he had been depressed before, that he had suffered from depression or had used to be depressed or whatever, what did that mean to you as as a doctor looking for this man to give you support? What did it mean to you?
It meant a lot because I spent my freshman year at Harvard lying in my bunk waiting to die. Because what happens is when you've accomplished the things that you set out to accomplish that you thought would define success for you, and you get there and the reward, the prize, and I'm not talking about everyone else thinking things are good, but that relief, that fulfillment is not there, you fall into this abysmal sense of now what? And so I spent a good first at Harvard, first after I finished, then finished medical school, and that kind of drove me into the direction of psychiatry, where I had depression. But the thing in medicine is you can't run to a diagnosis or your career can be ruined. Yeah, you can't say I'm a depressed physician because then when it's time to get licensing, you have to go through a bunch of extra stuff. So when I heard that Kellen had accomplished all these things, not even in spite of, probably in part as a result of the growth that happened during his depression, I found that to be very encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave me another point of resonance. So
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Chris just posted on the chat, imperfections are not inadequacies. They are reminders that we're all in this together. Brene Brown.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the more we share these things, the more we share. I used to call them oops and toots. The more we share our toots, our horning, our toots our horn, the more our successes, we need to share them. People need to be comfortable with sharing their greatness. Too often we cover that up too. And the more we share our greatness, the more other people will share their greatness from their heart, as well as sharing our oops. I mean, because those things that we oops. Oops, I made a mistake. Oops this, oops that. What the heck? Let's share it all, right? The more we share that, the less danger we fall into about being vulnerable. So what if I bumped my head on the car going out, or I slipped, or I made a mistake, or I said something? Let's figure out ways of saying something to understand what we're talking about as opposed to covering it up. Well, your mouth is moving, Kellen. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, one of the things I tell clients when I'm helping them understand how to use, you asked me what I do. One of the things I do better than anybody in the world, and I'll just claim it, is I help people find and express their personal story, because your unique value in the world is directly related to who you are, not what you do. And anybody can compete with you on what you do, but nobody can be who you are. So just like what you said, I tell people will connect with you more through your messes than your successes, because it is that humanity that creates the opportunity for connection and engagement. So people connect more with messes than successes, and that's your oops. And so go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, no, many years ago, I recognized the same thing about stories, and it was just like, oh my God, if we just shared our stories. So you know what a talking stick is, right? Native American talking stick. So I discovered these amazing tools for helping people tell their story. So that's one part. But then I started a newsletter called The Talking Stick, and people would write their stories. And then what do you do with a stick? You pass it. So my dream was that people would begin to pass these stories because they would hear, and you know what the stories were that people read the most? When you go back into constant contact, even 12 years ago, you know what they would read the most? The stories by kids and by men. You know why? You know why?
The least number are vulnerable and open to tell them.
Yeah, they hear from people like me, women, all the time. We're always sharing this, sharing that. But the men, people would always, the numbers were always up on the openings of the email when the stories were about men and written by kids. And it was fascinating. So it's not changed. We want to hear. I want to hear from men. And I think you've been observing a long time. So you have people who have listened and observed for a long time have an understanding. You've observed, whether it's been generational or it's in your genetics, but you've been observing things. And you've got my husband in particular, I'll say to him when I'm getting ready to do something, any words of wisdom today? Because I know he's not talking as much as me. But he's got some words of pearls. Words of pearls, right?
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I'm not surprised that the open rates are that way, especially the kid thing. You see even on the social media, Pinterest and others, the pictures that get the most repins are kids and cats too, but I guess cats aren't telling stories.
Right. Well,
But the
no.
kids anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I see men, women, I see couples, families, and when I see young people, it's mostly boys. I've seen young girls, teenagers, and young female adults, but most of what I see who come to me are the boys because they're holding on to the emotion, and they want and the creativity. What were you going to say?
Totally believe it. One
Yeah.
of the things I struggled with was my creativity because the whole thing of you're supposed to grow up, get a job, and do certain things was part of the whole programming. And I wanted to write music. And so I stifled that for a long time. And I now do a lot and I have some albums out and stuff like that. But my stifling my own creativity was one of the big causes of this conflict in me of having this innate need to create and then forcing myself in the box of doing something else because I was supposed to, whatever that
Right.
means.
No, it's so true, and I see it with these boys. Once I help them have permission that it's okay to be creative. It's okay not to be the football player. It is okay to enjoy playing video games and want to make video games. It's okay to want to write. Not everybody has to be a football player or a basketball player if you're a young man, and it's okay to feel and be compassionate. You know.
Absolutely.
And it's important for these young men to see men like you.
Thank you.
And I had no idea, I never do, any idea how these shows are going to go. Never. And I'm so blessed for not caring. Because if I tried to control it, it wouldn't be as meaningful. And if it's meaningful to me, these shows, then I am going to assume it's meaningful to everybody who's watching it. Right? So
Absolutely.
So we're almost out of time, and I'm going to ask the two of you if you would be willing to come back again.
Absolutely. No question.
I would love you to
Of
come
course.
back. I would love you to come back, and I am in the process of
Happy to do it. I love.
Yeah, you come back and talk more about even issues. I mean,
Sorry, I interrupted you.
no, go ahead. Finish what you were going to say. I didn't see you talking.
No, I just said I'd be thrilled to come back. Sharing this, I've decided to do it and to be as powerful. My goal is to create a movement. I mean, I have complete faith in my ability to do that. I'm a charismatic person that's served me through my career, and I've decided to focus total energy in this area. And so I have every confidence, and I would love every opportunity. And so I'd be thrilled out of my mind
Okay, so
to
tell
come
me the
back.
movement. Tell me what the movement is.
The movement is centered around this book, Tightrope of Depression. The name of the book is Tightrope of Depression, My Journey from Darkness, Despair, and Death to Light, Love, and Life. And I had created not only the book, but I'm writing 2 albums of music, which I'm partly done recording, and several original paintings. I also paint in
Wow.
acrylics and have stuff in galleries around the world. So that's the movement.
Wow. So, Manny, I love you, but
Yes,
I love you more now for bringing Kellum to my world.
it's my pleasure. And when I met Kellen, the main immediate benefit I had is there's a frustration when you have all this data and you can't get it communicated. And having someone understand the quantum aspects of the neuroscience, because Kellen was a math major. So when I was speaking topography, he's like, well, yeah, duh. And I'm like, thank you. You know, because
Yeah.
it's a relief, and it makes it that you don't feel as if you're going to die with your music inside of you, so to speak.
No, honey.
And
Yeah.
so having him help me turn around and help other physicians, help their patients by becoming their better self, and B, let out some of their music, that to me, that's all A pluses for me.
Yep. Many years ago, I did a workshop with home builders. I don't know if you know much about them, but they are want very much to be in their head. I mean, but they're so creative, and did a workshop about energy. But we didn't call it exactly energy. We called it something else, like how to read the dynamics between people. Until I got really smart, and I said, I'm not going to cover it up anymore. I'm talking about energy. I'm talking about energy. Anyway, he came over. The whole time during this workshop, he was like smashing everything. And at the very end came over, and you know what he said? Thank you. He said, because I always thought I just needed to do it this way. You let me know that I can still play my guitar and still be a great home builder. I don't have to just be this way. I can do the creative thing, and if anything happens, my home building gets better,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
tell us where do we find you, and what do we find, and do you need anything from our audience now? Kellum, do you need anything from our audience?
You know what? I actually do. There's 2 things. One is I'm going to start a Kickstarter project in the first week or so of February. So people that are interested in supporting something having to do with the publication of the book and the distribution of the music will be able to find that in early February, and I'll have to do something to communicate the URL when it's up, because it's not.
Okay.
That's number 1. And number 2, I love to connect and help people, whether I end up as client auth. So friend me on Facebook. Just my name, Kellen Fluke, which is like complicated, and there's only 2 in the world, and the other one's my son, so it's not hard to find. And let's just have a conversation and
Okay.
see if there's a way for us to connect, help the music that you have get out, and expand your vision in your world. That would be the best thing for me. I mean, I could give you a bunch of websites and stuff, but you can get all that on my Facebook wall.
Okay,
So
perfect.
just connect with me.
Okay, and then make sure you make friends of me too on Facebook, and I will with you, and then you can share your stuff, and I can comment. What about you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we want to keep it going. What about you, Manny?
Well, my life vision is to bring medicine 2.0 to folks, and that's compassionate, patient-centered medicine. So if you know any physicians who you know have a creative side, have a talented side, have a dream, have a song, send them to me so that I can help them go from being this robotic machine with information in it to a compassionate human being that is satisfied enough with their life to help others with what they know. So
So
I
you're
can
going to
do research.
you're going to coach physicians. Basically, is
Yes,
that what you're going to do?
yes. On January 31st, 2 weeks from now, BreakTheCageMD.com launches, and it will be providing physicians with the ability to move from doctor speak into compassionate interactions with their patients. Just that
Okay.
level of vulnerability. That's what I'll be coaching.
That's great. Okay, perfect. Well, I got it. I got a good concept in my head. and we're going to connect with you further as well about coming back on. And you can come back together, you can come back apart, whatever you like. But I love you together. You're a great couple. You're wonderful. So I want to thank you so much for coming and being vulnerable today. You know,
Much appreciated. Thanks for having us,
yeah,
Marilyn.
my pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I loved it. Thank you so very much for sharing, and I thank everybody out there for being here with us today. You can connect with me anytime. You see my name above, Marilyn at Reenchant Planet Earth, or Marilyn at powerofdialogue.com. You can find me on Facebook. Go check out my website, MarilynShannon.com. Love to connect with you anytime. And, you know, we all want to make this music louder. So just here we are. Just let's make the music louder. That's it. So with that, have a wonderful, wonderful week. We'll see you next week. Amnon. Mwah. Chris, thank you for everything. Manny, Kellen, thank you for being here. And we'll see you all soon. Bye. Bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCBVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.